Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 615. Releasing later this year on digital is The Keeper, a drama based on the true story of George Eshleman, an army veteran suffering from PTSD who hiked the Appalachian Trail while carrying 363 military name tags of veterans who committed suicide. A heart-stirring and deeply effective movie that brings to light the insidious tragedy of veteran suicide. The Keeper is also the latest film from director and actor Angus Benfield, I'm glad to say, joins me now on the podcast. Angus, how are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I am very well, thank you. And thank you so much for coming on. Would it be uh, rude of me to say that I did not realize that you were Aussie when I was watching the movie? Because I was watching it, I was like, oh yeah, Angus, pretty cool. Yeah, then I was doing some research and looking up some interviews and such, and I was like, oh, I know that accent. And then I
Yeah.
looked up your IMDb. I was like, oh, Sydney. Right. Okay. Good on you. So you went over to the States, what, 7 years ago or so? And you've been doing like a lot of work over there now, acting, directing. And so, yeah.
Yep, pretty much. That's right. Yeah, it came 7 years ago, and yeah, been doing a bit of everything. I started doing some, I wrote scripts, and I was, obviously an actor, and like every actor, a struggling actor, trying to get work. And so I just always thought the best way to get the work is create your own work. And
Mm.
that's I was doing that in Australia. I did that in New Zealand as well. So I was in New Zealand for a little bit, and then in Australia, of course. And yeah, but there's not as much work. It's a little harder to get, a career going in Australia and New Zealand. I mean, it's just not as big as it is in the US. So coming here was a big part of my sort of, I guess, dream. And yeah, but I sort of got here and it was a bit of sink or swim, because when you're here on a visa and stuff, you have to work as an actor only or a filmmaker. And so I had to sort of just create the work, and so I did that, and I did, like, got first film off the ground. Took almost 6 months to get that going, and then I've sort of been trying to do it ever since. And yeah, done a few, and got a bit of a system going and kind of growing it now. And yeah, but it's fun and exhausting at the same time.
So The Keeper is a little different in that this was a screenplay that you came across. Todd
Mm.
Tavalazzi wrote it. It's based on George's book. I think it was on Inktip that you found it online. You came across it. What was it about the story? What was it about George's story that really kind of spoke to you, that said, this is the next film that really going to put my heart and soul into?
Yeah, I mean, it was yeah, it was just, I came across the script and I was really quite amazed by the fact that no one had made it, and it was just like sitting there and they'll be trying to get it going. I really connected to the sort of mental challenges and the struggles that the character George is going through. Even though I don't have a military background, I have encountered a lot of vets since I've been in the US. Like I knew maybe one or two in Australia, but coming over here, I'm running into them all the time, and
Mm.
I seem to get on really well with them. And I don't know, there was just some sort of kinship, and I felt the same thing as soon as I read the script. I thought, I don't know, this is a really beautiful story. It's just something I felt had to be told. I mean, obviously there was the sort of the social kind of message that needed to get out there. All those aspects of, we need to sort of try and help people sort of prevent suicide. So there was that side of things, but also just as a story, I don't know. It just I kind of I was really drawn to it. It had a real sort of poetry to it, and yeah. And then when I reached out to Todd, and then eventually George, and then we all sort of connected and stuff. Yeah, it just kind of grew more and more. Understanding who George was, we just seemed to connect and get on really well. And yeah, and I brought on Kenny, who had worked with a little bit before, and he was a Marine, and then it turned out that George and Kenny were in the same war together, and then
That's
Todd had
right.
kind of
Yeah.
did military training. It was all very connected. It was really cool. So yeah, and I don't know. It's just one of those scripts that you don't find often, and you go, this has to be made, and so I just did whatever it took to get it made.
It's interesting how you said before how like when you went over to the States you met a lot of vets over there. I gotta say, like I probably met more veterans doing interviews like these, like film veterans turned filmmakers, and then
Yeah.
I have actual veterans here in Australia. A lot of it has to do with
Mm.
population, of course, but also a lot of it has
Yeah.
to do with just the amount of American veterans that have served over like these wars.
Mm,
I mean, we're talking in the hundreds of thousands, right? And the
yeah.
number of deaths as well attached to it means that there's a certain reverence towards veterans in America.
Mm,
That I'm not saying
mm,
that in Australia we don't have that as well. We have much reverence for the Anzacs and such, but it's just a
mm, mm,
different kind of level of intimacy there because a lot of people in the
mm,
States, I think, I've come across people who either died during battle or
mm,
as shown in The Keeper and in
mm,
other other films as well is that sometimes they come back and there's a great line in the movie where sometimes the pieces don't fit, they
mm.
can't get back
That's
together
right.
again, and then
Mm,
it leads to just really tragic circumstances where they take their own lives. I mean, I'm sure you found that as well, that the reverence towards
mm,
veterans in America is
mm,
just of a whole new kind of intimate kind of like intense level compared to what it is in Australia, right?
mm. Yeah, and I think it's generally here in America. There's a lot, way more patriotism to the country, and there's more of a culture of celebration of whether it's Fourth of July or whether it's graduation or all these things. Is like when we got here, it was kind of funny. There was always some big event when my son was going to school. Oh, there's got this big ceremony, and there's another ceremony. We're like, we're not used to this, and we
Yeah.
eventually kind of got used to it, and it's kind of nice. It's really cool. We really like it. So yeah, there's definitely that reverence for veterans, and there's more. One thing I do know from talking to the vets that I know is that there's a lot more of an incentive to join the military because you can get degrees, you can, you get health cares and pensions and things like that. So there's a lot of incentive. And then a lot of businesses will give veteran discounts and stuff, and there's lots of different things. But talking with George, it's like one of the areas where it sort of lacks. I mean, I wouldn't say sort of, but it has still lacked really badly over the years. Is obviously what to do with the mental health issue. It is getting better. There's a lot of private organizations that we put on the website that do help vets, but that's the one area that was kind of in amongst all this patriotism and celebration. There's also you kind of people don't really want to talk about this other issue of the vets coming home and then not being able to like it says in the movie, the pieces don't come back together again,
Yeah.
and that's why we made the film, and that's why George does the hikes and brings up awareness, because it's still something that's kind of even when trying to make the film, even trying to promote the film, all that kind of stuff, it's kind of if you do American Sniper, it's probably more glamorous and there's a lot more bravado to it. I mean, it's a bigger budget as well, but when
Mm,
you do something like this, it's a little bit harder to sort of sell, and so it's always a bit of an uphill battle because it's almost like people don't want to know about it, but
mm.
unfortunately it's a reality. But yeah, but it's definitely a different culture here, and I really love working with veterans. They're really great to employ on a film set because vets know what it's like to work under pressure.
Mm,
They know it, and so you get them on a film set, and it's a great thing too that. And they do have organizations here in Hollywood where for veteran entertainment, a group where it is for vets who can get work on a film set as anything from a PA to a gaffer or whatever. And I think it's a great opportunity for them because you suddenly you kind of got a mission again. You've got that. You've got a group to hang out with and work with on. So but yeah, they're great. I love working with them. So but yeah.
Please support Matt's movie reviews on Patreon. Get access to exclusive content, request movie reviews and top 10 lists, and help support my work. Please click on the Patreon link in the description below. So as soon as you get on the keeper and you decide you want to do this film and such, how soon after are you talking to George and kind of like hanging out with him and learning about him as a person as opposed to the character on the page?
Yeah, I mean, like once we sort of I optioned the script, and then we started talking on the phone. I started talking to Todd first, and then to George, and then eventually we did Zoom calls and stuff. And it was George's baby. It's a very personal story. I mean, we didn't do anything to change it. It was exactly what it was, and to a fault probably because some people go, "Oh, it's too slow" or whatever. But I kind of do. I couldn't change it. I couldn't suddenly put in a car chase and this, that, and the other. I mean, it had to be what it was, and that's what he wanted from us. So we had I had to earn his trust a bit, to make sure that we weren't going to try and change it all around. And the other thing was also that we were going to film exactly where he went. So we actually were going to go to the Appalachian Trail. We were going to go to Maine all the way down to Georgia. We were going to do it and not just go out the backyard and shoot it up on the, the hills here. So there was a lot of things and then eventually it was probably about maybe still took about like maybe 2 years of just getting to know each other and stuff. And then we met each other. We did a little promo video, and George, Kenny, and Todd came to LA, and we went to on a little bit of a hike around the corner from where I live, and that's where it really bonded. It really cemented, and George felt like he could trust me, and we talked about mental health issues and anxieties and depression and all that sort of stuff, and he felt like this was all good. And then after that, it was just the mission of trying to figure out how we're going to shoot this thing because when you've got the Appalachian Trail, it's a lot of how do we get to it, how do we get in there, all that kind of stuff. So there was a big logistic location thing that George was really, really great to help us with, because it's a lot of land and and not everything's accessible. So yeah, so it's probably like a 2-year process, and it was hard to like trying to raise money for it. And we, again, it's one of those stories that it's like, I don't know, it's not a sexy story, it's not an exciting story. And even though everyone pats you on the back and says this is really good, we didn't get a lot of people sort of supporting it. So it was a real uphill battle, but we got to a point and it was like, you know what, we're going to shoot it. We're going to shoot this no matter what. If we have it, we'll shoot it on our iPhones if we have to. We're just going to get something out there that will hopefully, someone watches this film. And especially when it goes to streaming too, that someone watches it at 3 a.m, it might save their life. It might help them to keep going. That's how. So that's what we just forged through. And so it was about a 2-year process of development and getting to know each other. And now we're really great friends.
What is your process in playing a real life person? I mean, actors have different processes, how they like to go to things. What's your approach there, especially considering you're also co-directing as well? And I'm in a producer role and such, but how do you go about doing a real life person? Because it's a fascinating kind of thing to me, where on one instinct I want a person to play a fictional person on a page, but another one when there's a person you've met and you talk to when you're portraying their story. I'm sure there's different kind of levels to the acting game when it comes to that.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't trying to do a sort of a character of him or copy him. George had a very distinct accent, so I just wanted to find things I could sort of maintain, because there was a lot of, it's hard because I'm also producing it, which is quite a lot of, the producing side's kind of work, like harder than the directing. And there's a lot of stuff you're dealing with. It's always problems, and it's money, and it's this, and it's like so many things. So that pulls at you, that drains at you. And then there's the directing thing as well. And that's why I brought on Kenny to kind of co-direct. So at the beginning, I kind of carried the weight of that, and then he sort of took a lot more of it towards the end. But yeah, there was a lot of emotions and a lot of other things I had to deal with. So I just had to find somewhere where I could connect with this character. And it's not like I had the luxury of, this is the one movie I'm doing, and and I can spend 6 months and just developing and following him around. And I don't. That's the thing. It's easier on a bigger budget. When you've got no money, you just have to use what you've got. And I just had to find kind of a sort of a tone to the accent, and then just sort of hang on that, so I could kind of keep that going, because you get so drained and you're on the trail and you're in the environment. It's just like I didn't want to be trying to. It's like I had to just make it simple that I can do this, and then focus on the sort of mannerisms that I mean, the good thing is George was with us the whole time, so he was with me, so I could kind of just get that rhythm and that tone and stuff. I mean, he's mostly telling jokes all the time because he's really funny to be around with, and he's always, but he also had moments where he didn't want to be on set, because we were going through some heavy scenes, so he would step away. But for the most part, he was incredibly, because that's always quite daunting when the person you're playing in a movie is right there. So, but he was really great. And I just kind of found that place where we were sort of like, I was like him, but not exactly like him, and no, just enough. And everyone seemed to be happy with that. And that's something I could kind of maintain. It's weird though. I find like finding a character is just like, I don't know, like, you can read Stanislavski's, like, an actor prepares and he does a book on how to find a character. And it's in the old days of theaters, it's the wig, it's the nose, it's the
Mm.
clothing. So, and that's still kind of relevant. So, you put the pack on. We actually had the real pack that George hiked with. We had the real name tapes. I had all them because he gave them to me when we first met. So I had all those things, and we were in the environment. We are actually on the trail. So all that builds the character, and then you just let it go and just let it flow and stuff. And I find that was that's all I did. And then there's something that comes alive, and you just kind of roll with it. I don't try to force something and try to be kind of unrealistic. And I really wanted authenticity in this film. I wanted it to feel like it's almost like a documentary or something. It's just a very real feel. So yeah, but that's my unhelpful advice to an actor to create a character. Something like that.
You said before you shot on an actual trail, the Appalachian Trail. There's a almost like a motto throughout the film, or a philosophy throughout the movie, which is the trail provides. You walk the trail provides. To me, I always wanted to do the what's it called, the Santiago one in Spain. I always wanted to do that trail. I said I'll do it when I'm 40. That was 3 years ago, so I haven't done it yet, but maybe when I'm 50. But I always wanted to do it because I like the idea of pilgrimage. And to me, I think trail is kind of like pilgrimage. It's like a certain thing you kind of like walking towards, but it's something that's, as you're taking the steps in real life, the steps being taken inside as well, right? And when that comes to that context of the trail provides, what did the trail provide for you while being there as a filmmaker, as an actor? What does the trail provide for a film crew to be on that place and going through the same steps that George went through so many times? I'm just curious about how a location can affect a movie, not so much in a physical sense, but maybe in a psychological, spiritual sense. Is there anything like that occur?
Yeah, yeah, obviously, yeah. I mean, it is definitely that pilgrimage kind of thing. Obviously, that's something that's very real. Like a lot of veterans do the trail. They do either a through hike, which is where you just keep going through from Georgia to Maine, or Maine to Georgia, and that's like 6 months.
Wow,
Or
yeah.
you do like in sectional hikes and stuff. So we ran into lots of veterans who, in some cases they were like retired, which meant they'd served like around 20 years, and now they'd grown their beards, and they were like Marines and all this sort of stuff. And then it was kind of sad though too, because we found you run into some younger guys who are like vets as well, and they were like at the hostels, and they were drinking a lot, and you could tell they were really, I mean, they were younger guys, but they looked 20 years older.
Mm,
They're still dealing with stuff. So they're on the trail trying to kind of process. And then so there's a lot of different things happened in that. So, and then there was people that we run into when we're filming who then started talking to us. And we ran into some young girl who was hiking, and then she said, "Oh yeah, she started talking about her father and her brother who both committed suicide, who were both veterans, and both committed suicide within about a year apart from each other." And then George was there, so he'd be able to sort of comfort them and stuff. So there's a lot of these interesting moments, and other times where we work with local actors, and they were veterans, and they were really affected by it. And there was a sort of a cathartic moment where they probably don't always get a chance to sort of have that emotional release. So we saw a lot of those things happen. Then we had, I mean, from the sense the trail was providing kind of thing, there was definitely, we had a lot of people helping us, and people ended up joining like almost like this caravan of a film crew, and then they stayed with us throughout the whole time. There was many people who did that, which was amazing, and they were like through hikers who'd done it multiple times. Some were veterans as well. So yeah, there's definitely something that goes on when you're going through that process, and we really felt it. It was just like I said, it's like you start off acting in it, but all the environment becomes real, and it's a weird thing because now when I watch it again, I can feel that feeling, and I can feel the emotions and stuff. And especially towards the end, it wasn't really, oh, I've got to act in the scene. It was real. It was very, there's something kind of connecting there. So it's hard to explain, but it's definitely, there's definitely a feeling of a spiritual and kind of feeling of being out there. And I think too, like, you're separate from a lot of technology, and we're so distracted. It's kind of like when you fast from
Mm.
for Lent or something like that. You put away certain things, and I think the trail, going on any of those trails, is really part of that process. We put away everything, and then you just walk, and then you have to deal with yourself because you're every day. It's just you. A lot of times, even if you're with a group, you end up you're not walking side by side. There's that whole isolation. It's a very kind of wilderness fasting kind of, Jesus in the wilderness for 40 days kind of feel, where things are going to come to the surface. You're going to deal with stuff, and obviously that's why obviously in the story George was kind of going there to deal with stuff, and he thought he was going to deal with it in one way, but in the end he dealt with it in a different way. Which, thank God, he's still around today because of that. So yeah, it's a very special place, definitely.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you love. So the film The Keeper theatrically came out during Memorial Weekend, which is incredibly, like, for us Aussies here, because kind of same as like Anzac Day, but like stretched over like 2 days, right? And we spoke before about the reverence for military and all the stuff that comes with that in America. So when you release a film like The Keeper during Memorial Weekend, what type of reactions do you get from military personnel? Do people reach out? Do people, do you come across people say, "Hey, I remember I saw that film. What type of reactions do you have?" And now, is there a level of I wouldn't say intimidation, because of course I don't think you'll be intimidated, but at least a level of eager anticipation to kind of see what their reactions are above all everyone else's, because more than anything else,
Oh, sure.
you make that film for them. And I think that's really kind of like something that is of course sticking with you, and of course is sticking with Kendall, because he's a veteran himself throughout the film.
Yeah. I mean, it was a challenge when we came out, because every other film that came out was $100 million movie, and I'm not exaggerating. We were up against every single hundred because it was a big Memorial Day weekend. Is a really big event, so we're kind of squeezing out there at 60 odd theaters across the US and competing against every single blockbuster. But and that's where I think when we go to streaming, I think we'll hear more responses. But what we also get people posting on the website. There's a memorial wall, and they can share stories and stuff. And so I mean, we had a live 13th theater event as well, so we were able to see firsthand people in our cinema where we did it, in those 15 other theaters. And yeah, the responses, it's what we find is that the first thing that seems to be happening quite a lot is veterans don't realize that they're dealing with something, and when they watch the film, they suddenly go, "Oh, wait a minute, I'm dealing with some PTSD." And that started with Kenny, who was directing it. And Kenny's a sharpshooter Marine who can he can shoot someone with a pistol 100 miles away, but he doesn't come across like a Marine. He doesn't have tattoos. He's just a very mild-mannered, lovely, sweet guy. And when we were filming the scene when they were talking about coming back and the pieces don't fit together, but it broke him. And even though he was directing it, he had tears streaming down his face. And I brought it up. I said, how are you going? And he said he didn't realize, but he had this PTSD, and now he's going to help getting help for it and counseling and stuff. So, and then I was when we had the screening, one of the other actors, he was I think he was a SEAL, or maybe he was he brought his friend who was a SEAL as well, but he had maybe Marine training as well, or he's a Marine. And he suddenly opened up to me about how, because in the story we talk about Peanut and how she had what happened to her in the military, and he said, well, even though he's a guy, he said that he had an abuse situation, but again, he hadn't really talked about it. And he's been back and out of the military for several years, and he just suddenly opened up. He said, "Yeah, I went through abuse. I had some abuse." And so it's just this weird thing that just suddenly just releases this pressure. And I think because it's quite a, again, it's not like a exciting film where there's action and people getting shot and explosions and stuff. It's just it is like going on the trail, and by the end of it, it starts to kind of rattle something. And so we're hearing more and more stories, and then George is reporting lots of stories all the time, because when he's been doing these other private screenings where he's actually there with the people, and people are coming up to him and telling him stuff. So it's just starting to kind of release that pressure in people, and we expect to hear a lot more. And that's the idea, is that George will use this film. He'll carry it around for the rest of his life, probably, in doing screenings and events and stuff. Yeah, and from that we'll certainly hear some more stories. But so far it's done something that it's hard to explain, but it just helps, I guess, make the soldier aware. Because the thing is, a soldier is trained to be a fighter and a warrior, and they're strong and they're tough guys and girls. And it's like, so you're not trained to deal with the emotions and all the internal thing. And so it makes you realize, oh, there's this other battle, there's this other war I haven't dealt with yet, and that's the war inside me. And unfortunately, it's one of the most lethal, because you can be the toughest Marine, a toughest SEAL, toughest Army, whatever, and that internal battle is the thing that takes you down. So I think that's what they're realizing, and so that's what we hope the film will do for people.
Well, it's a incredibly important film, and congratulations to you and Kenny and the cast and crew for bringing Georgia's story to life, because it's an issue, really, like veteran suicide. I mean, the statistics are crazy. I think it's like 50% of suicide rates, even though the veterans only make up 1% of the population. I mean, that's just a
That's right.
crazy statistic right there. And I think it's a really important movie being made here. It's a fantastic film as well. I got to say, guys did a great job here. And for everyone out there, The Keeper, later this year, we're talking what, Veterans Day, maybe around that time, will come out.
Around November. Yeah.
I really encourage everyone out there, then when it comes out, and I'll make sure to keep everyone abreast of the release dates and such. I'm sure, Angus, you're going to have stuff on your socials and everywhere else when it's ready to come out. And if anyone comes across any type of sometimes there might be a Q&A screening popping up here and there. If you do, I really encourage you to check out the film in cinemas if you can as well. If it's around you anywhere at all. And yeah, I think you just did a really great job here, Angus, and congratulations to you, and thank you for your time. You did yeah, it's been a pleasure to talk to you today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.